Hello and welcome to Take a Beat. My name is Tirza and I'm the digital pastor here at IES. And Take a Beat is an IES podcast where we invite you to take a little break, chat about stuff, only to launch ourselves back on the beat. And so we are back with Pastor Dave and Pastor Gigi. And we're now tackling relationship-based questions. And these are questions asked by a bunch of people, teens, young adults, maybe, adults. Um, so I'll just jump straight into it. The most popular one is thoughts in age gaps.
I'm all for it. Yeah. Well, especially if it's the guy who is the older one than me. There's something about maybe is that a good answer?
Yeah.
Did you just second guess yourself?
Yeah, like for Dave and I, because they always say, I don't know if it's true, but they say that guys mature slower than girls. So I think for a girl to marry somebody who's marry someone who is a lot older or slightly older is always a good thing. Um, but the reverse, I mean, there's that's I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but
Yeah.
there's always I think it's not so much maybe the two-person dating, but the families involved. In Asia, you say that you're not just marrying. It's not just two people getting married. You're marrying the whole clan.
Yeah.
And so when unfortunately, this is I'm not I don't necessarily agree with it, but unfortunately, there is that idea that if the girl is older than the guy, it's not gonna last.
I think, from my perspective, so looking at this end of life, I'm 68 years old. I've outlived every man on my father's side for the last 4 generations. So I'm already conscious of mortality, and my wife is almost 8 years younger than me. And as from her family line and everything else, 90 is not out of the question. It's the norm, right? So I'm thinking, man, if it's 60 on my side and it's 90 on her side, and she's 8 years younger than me, she could live 25 or 30 years after I'm gone. And so it's important to know that, and it's important to think about it and plan about it. But it also means it's not necessarily bad if the woman is a little bit older either, because they tend to be a little healthier, they live a little longer, and so that leaves that time of separation is a little bit shorter. And I think we need to be realistic and say that society has a big impact on it. Like, I agree with what my wife said. Society doesn't usually look down on a man who's a little bit older than the girl, or vice versa.
Maybe not so much looking down, but they
Yeah.
always have a joke about it.
Or it's acceptable. Yeah. When we first walked into church, people said, "Oh, he must be really rich." So I was old, and my wife was still young and pretty, and she's still young and pretty. But I think age gaps are okay. I think for Christians, they need to be able to have the capacity to talk about, what does this age gap imply? Why does this age gap exist? If one person is a lot older than the other person, what are the implications of that? And there are a lot of implications of that. But we do know people who are 25, 30 years apart in age. And that's also viable. They can have a really good marriage. No marriages are automatic. Yeah. Being born the same day doesn't do you any good.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so next question. How to think less of him, lowercase h, and more of him, uppercase h.
I think that's a really good question. That's a fair question. And I think you have to really be understanding and say, one of the things is how you feed yourself. And if you're around a person a lot that you have feelings towards and they're not responding, if that is the issue, then you need to be around them less. And you have all these things that remind you of a relationship you had or a relationship that you want that you never had. And then on the flip side of that is, are you maintaining the things that you need to do spiritually, reading the Bible, praying, being in Christian fellowship, doing things in your life that take up your free time or your spare time. So you're not sort of mourning this former or maybe never act relationship. That's what I would say. But you're human. You have to sometimes say, this is something I have to deal with, and I'm just going to put my trust in the Lord.
Yeah. I think if you're thinking of him and not thinking of him, then there's something wrong if both people don't share the same values. For instance, if I'm thinking of a boy and it makes me ungodly, then maybe you should check what
Check your
kind of
heart.
check your heart and what
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of relationship. If
Hey,
you're
yeah.
if you are always battling, if there is a competition between uh like for instance, if when I was dating Dave, I didn't have to worry about whether I'm thinking of God or thinking of Dave.
There's no
Be-
contest.
there's no contest because I know also the kind of relationship we had was something that was honoring to the Lord. So if there's always a sort of like if you're trying to, trying uh, to think of God because maybe your relationship with your boyfriend is not so good, then if there's a competition, then maybe you should you should check that kind of relationship.
Yeah, I got to say here, when I read that question, I automatically assumed that it was a person who was not in a relationship but spent their time thinking about this guy all the time. If you're in a relationship with a person and it's not an inappropriate relationship, there's nothing wrong with thinking about it. There's nothing wrong with thinking about it.
I mean,
So I'm assuming, yeah, oh
part
man,
of yeah,
I'm still
part of yeah,
moaning. So
part of what God has given us is the ability to feel and romantically
yeah,
feel that.
those are
Those are
good things.
good things.
Yeah.
Those are God created those things. But what I'm saying, if I'm thinking about this guy, whether I'm dating him or not, and if there's a competition between my thoughts about God, then maybe I have to, I have to think twice about what kind of relationship because it makes me ungodly or makes me, feel guilty because I'm not thinking about God. You understand what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Yeah.
All right. How to deal with being avoidant and scared of commitment.
Oh, get out of that
Yeah.
relationship.
I mean, if somebody avoids you, then they don't want you, and
Yeah,
just go on to somebody else, go on to
that's
something
right.
else.
If a person is afraid to make a commitment, then you probably don't want to
Yeah.
be with that person because if you are a person who is longing to have a commitment or expecting to have a commitment or wanting to commit to somebody but the other person doesn't share that, then I think, yeah, just get out of the
Yeah.
relationship.
So, how about the flip side? What if this person, whoever's asking, is afraid of commitment?
Okay.
Well, then you have to ask yourself the question, why? Why are you
Why?
afraid of
Why are you
commitment?
afraid?
What is it? Look, we deal with a lot of people for a lot of different things. And most people, I would say in most cases, 80% of the problems that people come with can be traced back to something to do with the way they were raised. So a lot of people that are having a hard time with commitment is some of it is out of their own personal personality and stuff, but a lot of times it's because they're afraid of ending up like their mom or like their dad or like their aunt or like their uncle, and they need to you need to be honest about those things. We're doing this thing right now, and we're talking about getting healing in your heart for the things that have happened to you, the wounds you have, and the wounds you have enormously influence the way you behave in relationship and marriage. And you got to be honest about it. Like I don't want to be committed. Uh, sometimes you don't want to be committed because you don't really want to be committed to that person. In that case, you need to be with a different person, right? And then, but maybe you're afraid of what you've seen, what you've grown up with. Then that's a whole other issue, and you need to deal with that. And if you can't deal with it, if you can't commit to people, then you need to stop being involved in other people's lives. You need to stop dating because it's not fair to a person that's going to care about you.
Valid. So, next question. If God has prepared a spouse for us, does that count as soulmates?
No, there are no soulmates. There's no such thing as soulmates. So we believe that this is what I believe, that God has a plan and purpose for our life that is always about who we are. It's not about anything like that. It's not about so do I know, do I understand that God saw in his plan in my life and my wife's life that we would end up being married? Yes. Did he do things to help us so that we would be better in that? Did he bring our lives together? Yes. Could we have somehow, for one reason or other, ended up married to different people? Yes. Could we have been happy in those relationships? Yes. But I'm completely convinced that for me to marry Gigi was a godly thing and a wonderful thing. But that didn't make her my soulmate. In fact, we're really, really, really very different. Well, I won't tell you the whole story, but part of my experience the last 2 days, I was at a bunch of meetings in Hong Kong. And part of my experience to be there was to go to a place where it turned out she and I were there at the same time. We didn't know each other yet. And that's really special to me uh, for some very strange reasons. One of them was when I was there at that season for 6 weeks, a guy prophesied and said, I'm going to marry somebody who's in Hong Kong at the time. And I just laughed because IS is a nonprofit organization. I just laughed and everything else. And years later, when I met her and we're talking about different things, I already knew how I felt about her. We're talking about different things. And I found out she was there. And we would have been in that coffee shop at the same time.
Sounds like a movie, doesn't it?
Yeah, right.
No.
But it was very
Make
meaningful
a Korean
to me.
drama out of it.
Yeah, it's very meaningful. That was our meet
Meet
cute.
cute.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are no such things as soulmates.
And I
My
think,
goal is to be her soulmate. That's the way that works.
and I think maybe there's also this misconception, especially in the Eastern or Asian culture, of this whole like destiny, like who you're destined to be with. But I'm like,
In the West too, it's
yeah.
ridiculous.
But also that focuses on, oh, finding your spouse is your destiny, like when it's not. Okay, so next question. Is it okay to be jealous with someone else's relationship, even if you're already in one?
That's a complicated question.
Yeah.
Are you jealous with their relationship and the way it works? If that's aspirational, if you see somebody who has a good relationship and you want to be in a relationship like that,
Then that's not
that's
a bad
great.
thing. Yeah.
It's a good thing. It's an inspiring thing. But if you're saying like, yeah, I'm going out with this guy
But I
and
like
you know,
that other
I like
guy
that other guy
because-
better. No, that's not a good thing at all. Right. And so it depends on what that is. But you know, I've always felt sorry for everybody that I know that didn't marry my wife because I'm just so happy to be married to her. And I just, they missed it.
That's right, you missed it.
Yeah. I know you're watching.
Okay, so is it okay to date a person with a different religion? What are some of the difficulties that can happen if you date someone who's from a different religion? Faith?
Okay, so the answer here involves also what you say about dating. So I know people who are Christians who will say, I'm not going to be in a dating relationship with anyone I won't marry because I don't want to be brokenhearted. And I respect that highly. I think it's really good. But there are other people that say there's nothing wrong with me getting to know people socially who are maybe, not that a person that I would not marry. I think for Christians, they need to realize that, yeah, it is kind of a God thing. If you look in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, when it talks about somebody whose spouse is no longer there, and they should marry a believer. A woman, it says specifically, I think it took it for granted that men would choose a woman who's a believer. And that was because that was not usually the context where women got a chance to choose.
Yeah.
When they get a chance to choose, the church and the Bible expects them to choose a Christian. And so that's really, really important. However, you need to understand that this is not religious snobbery. Having a faith that you share is fundamental in building a happy marriage. There are many people who have good and happy marriages who don't share faith. There are also people who fall down cliffs and don't die. but don't jump off a cliff just because, there's something like that.
And don't go
Yeah.
anywhere close to a cliff.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Next question. How do I manage familial expectations in finding someone? I am dating someone, but my parents and extended family are not supportive due to ethnic differences.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
So, there's a realistic perspective and there's a Christian perspective. And a Christian perspective says that in Christ there is no longer any division between different kinds of ethnicities because we all become part of God's family. And so there are many Christians who look down on other kinds of Christians because of their ethnic background. And that's just sin. All right. So if that's the only issue here, you need to realize that your family they're sinning in that respect. Okay. On top of that, there are issues within the world where if you're you're married to somebody and they're different from you ethnically, socially, culturally, it does create extra problems. And you need to understand those problems and you need to think about those problems and you understand you'll live with those problems the rest of your life. That doesn't mean you shouldn't get married. It's the same thing if you're involved in a relationship with somebody you love that has a health problem, or they have a different cultural background or many other things like that. But you just need to approach them realistically. Right? Yeah.
It's really hard because you do want to make your family happy. You don't want to have some kind of conflict just because you like a certain person. The ideal thing is that your whole family would agree to who you pick to marry.
Yeah.
And but sometimes it's hard to it's really hard to answer this question. So whoever asks this and you're facing something like that, maybe we can have a little chat, privately, because there's no hard and fast rule. Every situation is very unique, and so we deal with it differently. So we cannot say, oh, it's not a good idea, or you should just go. If your family don't agree, then you should marry that person. Or I can also say, if you don't care about families, just go with whoever you pick. There's no rule like that. But the ideal thing is that because marriage is such a happy occasion, you don't want anybody to miss out. You don't want any family members to not be included, or if they have other things that they are not so happy about the person you're marrying, you want to also listen to them. So, it's really, like I said, every if you're facing something like that, it's there's an answer and a help to that. So if you are facing that, just let us know.
And you sure don't want to be standing at the altar while you're getting married thinking, I hope my family's happy because I'm not. So you're the one marrying them. And you don't want to ignore your family, but your family, they've got to understand where you're coming from too.
Yeah.
And the better you can handle that, the better you can discuss that.
Right.
But that's not just racism. It's an issue of different races, different cultures, different social stratus, different, kinds of things like that.
Yeah.
It's not, there are, your family and your new family, they don't necessarily, it doesn't become magic. Every culture has mother-in-law jokes.
Interesting. Okay, so next question, which makes me chuckle because Chris is right here. What does a Christ-centered relationship look like in practical terms?
Well, you're talking about, it depends on, you're talking about courting, dating one.
Yeah.
I think honesty is the real important issue. As a Christian, you learn how to be honest, and that's the most valuable tool that you can have long-term in a relationship. So you're able to talk and be honest with your feelings and be honest with the things that are going on and in your heart and, about your relationship and all those kind of things. And I think that really does go a long way towards making it Christ-like. There are things that would be fun for people to do, like we used to when my wife was in another country, when we were already in a relationship, we'd read the same chapter in the Bible, and do things like that. But people can do those things and still not be honest in a relationship and things like that too.
Same thing.
Okay. I think this is from a teen. How do you deal with an unrequited crush?
Oh,
Move on.
yeah.
Years
right.
ago, I was doing Q&A for the
All the
teens.
questions are from this room.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, there's adults who get unrequited crushes too. Years ago, I was doing a live Q&A for teens, and somebody asked me, Pastor Dave, I've been moved to the friend zone. How do I get back? I said, dude, once you've been moved to the friend zone, you're done. You're never coming
can't
back
get
from
back.
the friend zone. That's just reality.
I think the other one too is the brother in Christ.
Yeah,
zone.
yeah. I just want to be friends.
Oh, man,
That never happens. That's such a bad idea. Who can be friends, Now, if you can say, I have a house in Bali, then you're going somewhere.
Okay, so how to make a guy notice and fall for you?
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know that. Yeah.
You know what?
That's where you're trying to attract,
Yeah, I would
Great.
say that guys really like a girl that can be fun. That just seems to be fun to be around. They will always pay attention to that. The girls that laugh and everything else like that. They will always pay attention to that.
I'm sorry, I'm just thinking after this, there's going to be a bunch of girls just laughing.
Welcome to IES. Yeah, that's not really what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's not what we're talking about.
But we'll take them as greeters.
That's true.
Okay, so what are
Now, I
markers?
cannot see somebody now. If they're laughing, then they have ulterior motives. Who are you trying to?
Who are you trying to impress? Who's here? So next question.
Hillary, don't laugh. Yeah.
I don't think this is from a teen, but what are markers couples need to know they're ready? Okay, what are markers couples need to know they're ready for marriage, and what makes signs? What are signs that show them that they are not ready?
You're not ready for marriage if you don't want to get married. If you don't want to really spend, being married is about being together.
If you're jealous with the other
Somebody else's
relationship.
relationship, yeah.
Yeah.
Or if you're not laughing. Or if you don't have a
Yeah.
house in Bali. Oh, we always tell people you need to be married to somebody that you can't stand and not be married to. I was how old was I when we got married? I was 32, 33 years old when we got married. I knew I could do life being single. The issue of being married, I was working with an organization making it very hard to accomplish my goals as a minister if I was single. But I was single because I didn't have anybody I wanted to be married to. Then when I met Gigi, I wanted to be married to her, and that was it.
Yeah.
That was it.
I think one of the things that to me is very obvious if you're in a relationship and it becomes an obligation to be with that person, then you don't really want to be with that person. If there are issues in their habits, maybe their things that they say that you cannot stand, then those are things you're not going to be able to. If you think, oh, you can excuse that now, later on you'll take care of it, then you don't want to be in that kind of relationship.
Yeah.
And that to me are signs if you don't really want to be, if you're not interested in what they're doing, um, if there are areas that you don't really want to commit.
If you
Then-
feel like you're stuck with them,
Yeah.
or if you feel like, oh, I don't think I can do any better. Ugh.
Or like you're just settling, you're
Yeah.
just, oh, somebody might not want me, if I let go of this. And that's really not. We always say it's better to be single wishing you're married than married wishing you're single. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
One of the things that we talk about how important honesty is one of the things too is your expectation. And we've had people that we were counseling with that said, I have to be married. There's an expectation that I need to get married. I need to have a family. And it doesn't really matter whether the person I'm marrying is a great person. And they're, if they're honest and that's really true, then they probably could get married to a lot of different people and be perfectly happy. Any two people who are married, who are Christians, can have a very good marriage. And they can also have a bad marriage. And that's nothing to do with who they're married to. It's to do with how much they put into it. And so that kind of a feeling is, if you don't really want to put the effort, like if you think this person needs to be this, don't get married. You're not ready to get married to that person.
Okay, so next one. What happens in premarital counseling? What happens if in premarital counseling you find out that you're incompatible?
It's
You
not
don't,
too
yeah,
late.
that's not what premarital counseling is about. Now, when you are dealing with premarital counseling, you will understand your incompatibilities. And the issue is, are you going to understand them well enough to know that you need to sort it out? Premarital counseling doesn't say, oh, you two guys shouldn't get married. We've had a lot of premarital counseling where we told them, when you guys get married, if you get married to each other, you will fight, and 90% of your fights will be about this topic. So knowing that, maybe you should be somebody who's more compatible.
Or you should work on that
Yeah,
area.
or work on that area. One of the biggest issues that we've seen couples face here is actually more than religion and things like that, is goals in life. You know, we have some people that their number one goal is to be successful financially. And if there's one that wants that and another that doesn't, that's going to always be a problem. And so you need to be honest about it and say, well, I'll be okay if we're married, and you're never the boss. If the goal is you have to own your own business. Somebody told me, it said, in my family, if you're not the director of a company, you're a failure. And that was the guy, right? And so it wasn't his wife worrying about it. It was like, I have all this pressure on me. And I can't imagine that, you know, if you married into that family and, yeah, I'm really good at what I do, I'm the best, whatever. Yeah, but you're not a director of a company, you're a failure. That would be really tough. And you would need to discuss that. And that's the kind of things you find out in premarital counseling.
Okay, we have one last question. I'll choose this one. How do you deal with loneliness in being single? I didn't ask that question.
My wife, it's hard for her to answer because she always had boyfriends. And so, yeah,
It's never lonely.
yeah.
Yeah, I think you can be lonely also uh, when you're with somebody. I think loneliness is um, you have to deal with that whether or not you are single or you are with somebody. There are a lot of people I know who are lonely and they're with, they're married or they're dating somebody. I think loneliness has something to do with um, your aspirations in life, what you want to do, your disposition in life. If you're always have a feeling of like you're just not content with what you have or don't have. Um, so I think loneliness is not just about being single. So yeah,
Some of the loneliest people I know are married. And some of the happiest people I know are single because they really can do almost anything they want. And if that's important to you, then you probably should think about staying single. I want to be able to do this. I want to be able to do that. Yeah.
but like I said, it's really what you want in life, what your expectations and your aspirations. If you um, having a relation, at the risk of sounding spiritual, I think having um, a real good relationship with God can help you with a lot of the loneliness maybe that you're facing.
And having a house involved.
Yeah.
We're going back to that.
So yeah.
All right, well, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your side of the story and for answering all of these questions. Thank you for those who have submitted questions. Well, we'll see you next week on Take a Beat.